The transport shuttle's engines hummed with nervous energy as Nova-chan pressed her face against the viewport, watching the intergalactic academy grow larger against the star-filled backdrop of space. The massive station rotated slowly, its crystalline spires and bioorganic modules creating a breathtaking fusion of technologies from across the galaxy. Her stomach twisted with a mixture of excitement and terror. "Attention, passengers," announced the shuttle's AI in its melodious tone, docking at Academy Station Alpha in 3 minutes. "Please prepare for disembarkation." Nova adjusted her simple gray uniform, painfully aware of how plain it looked compared to the exotic garments worn by her fellow passengers. To her left sat a being whose skin shifted through the color spectrum like liquid aurora, while across the aisle, a crystalline entity's body chimed softly with each movement. She was the only human aboard. The docking procedure completed with barely a tremor, and Nova gathered her single travel bag. As she stepped through the airlock, the Academy's grand entrance hall overwhelmed her senses. Beings from hundreds of worlds moved in graceful harmony, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic civilization. The air itself seemed to shimmer with translated conversations in dozens of languages. "New arrivals, please proceed to Orientation Bay 7, called out a floating orb of light that somehow projected a distinctly authoritative presence despite having no visible features. Nova followed the stream of newcomers through corridors that seemed to adjust their architecture to accommodate different species. Sections of the floor became softer for beings with sensitive appendages, while ceiling height varied to prevent anyone from feeling cramped. The Academy's reputation for innovation was already evident. Orientation Bay 7 buzzed with nervous energy as roughly 50 new cadets gathered in the vast chamber. Nova found a spot near the back, trying to make herself invisible among the crowd. Most of her fellow students seemed to know each other, or at least appeared confident in their abilities. She felt like an imposter. "Welcome, cadets, to the Intergalactic Academy," boomed a voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. A towering figure materialized at the front of the room, its crystalline body refracting the chamber's lights into dancing rainbows. "I am Instructor Zorth, and for the next 4 years, this institution will forge you into the galaxy's future leaders, diplomats, and innovators." The instructor's gaze swept across the assembled students, pausing momentarily on Nova. She felt heat rise in her cheeks under that alien scrutiny. "You represent 137 different worlds and species," Zorth continued. "Each of you brings unique perspectives, abilities, and challenges. The Academy's mission is not to standardize you, but to help you excel within your natural capabilities while learning to work harmoniously with others." Nova's attention drifted to a figure seated several rows ahead of her. Unlike the solid forms of most students, this being appeared to be composed entirely of shifting, luminous energy contained within a roughly humanoid outline. Occasionally, small sparks would arc between what might have been fingers, and the air around him seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. Despite his alien nature, something about his posture suggested he was listening with intense concentration. "Your dormitory assignments have been calculated based on compatibility matrices and learning optimization algorithms," Zorith announced. "Please check your personal communicators for room details and schedules." Nova's communicator chimed softly. "Dormitory Block C, Level 15, Room 847. Her roommate was listed as Kira Thorne, Zarian Prime. The name meant nothing to her, but she hoped for someone patient with human limitations. As the orientation concluded and students began to disperse, Nova found herself swept along in a current of chattering aliens. She was studying her schedule when someone bumped into her, sending her communicator skittering across the floor. "Apologies," said a voice like distant thunder mixed with musical tones. "I should have been watching my energy displacement more carefully." Nova looked up to see the luminous being she had noticed during the presentation. Up close, his energy form was mesmerizing. Patterns of light flowing through his translucent body like cosmic weather systems. Where most beings had eyes, he possessed two bright points of concentrated energy that somehow managed to convey warmth and concern. "It's okay," she managed, scrambling after her communicator. No harm done. He reached for the device at the same moment she did, and for an instant, their hands nearly touched. Nova felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the air itself was charged with possibility. The energy being pulled back quickly, his form flickering with what might have been embarrassment. "I am Stellenvoss, of Alta Prime," he said, offering what passed for a bow among his people, a graceful dimming of his luminous form. "And you are Nova Chun, the human cadet. Your admission scores were quite remarkable." Nova stared at him in surprise. "You know about my scores?" "The Academy publishes statistical analyses of each incoming class," Stalin explained, his energy patterns shifting in ways that suggested a smile. "Humans typically excel in adaptive problem-solving, but your spatial reasoning and tactical analysis scores were unprecedented for your species." "Quite fascinating, actually." Heat crept up Nova's neck. Fascinating wasn't exactly the reaction she'd hoped for, though she supposed it was better than disappointment. "I'm just trying not to embarrass my entire planet on the first day." "I doubt that will be a concern," Stalin said, and this time she was certain she detected warmth in his electrical voice. "The Academy's selection process is remarkably thorough. If you're here, it's because you belong here." Before Nova could respond, a new voice cut through their conversation. "Stellan, there you are. Mother's been looking for you." The newcomer was clearly of the same species as Stellan, though her energy form burned with a different hue, deep purple, shot through with silver. Her bearing suggested nobility, and the way she looked at Nova made it clear the humans weren't worth her notice. "Lysara," Stellan acknowledged with noticeably less enthusiasm. "Nova, this is Lysara Voss, my cousin." "Lysara, Nova Chun." "The human," Lysara said, her tone making it sound like a diagnosis. "How ... quaint. Come along, Stellan. We shouldn't be late for the family gathering." Stellan's energy form flickered, with what Nova was learning to recognize as internal conflict. "Perhaps we could continue our conversation later, Nova? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the Academy's curriculum structure." "I'd like that," Nova replied, surprised by her own boldness. As the two energy beings moved away, Nova caught Lysara's sharp comment. "Really, Stellan, you needn't lower yourself to socializing with primitives. Think of your standing." Stellan's response was too quiet for Nova to hear, but his energy form flared brighter for a moment before he and his cousin disappeared into the crowd. Standing alone in the emptying orientation bay, Nova felt the familiar ache of being different, of not quite fitting in. But something had changed during her brief encounter with Stellan. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, she didn't feel entirely alone. She gathered her belongings and set off to find her dormitory, unaware that her life was about to become far more complicated than she could possibly imagine. In the vast tapestry of galactic civilization, human and Alterran were about to weave a pattern that would challenge everything the Academy thought it knew about the boundaries between species. The stars outside the Academy's viewports seemed to twinkle with approval, as if the universe itself was eager to see what would unfold between the misfit from Earth and the prodigy from Alta Prime. 3 weeks into the semester, Nova had learned to navigate the Academy's social maze with careful precision. She kept her head down during lectures, partnered with whoever would accept her during group exercises, and spent most evenings alone in her room while her roommate, Kira Thorne, dominated the common area with her warrior diplomat friends from Zirion Prime. Kira was everything Nova wasn't tall, confident, with midnight blue skin marked by intricate silver tattoos that told the story of her family's diplomatic achievements. Her species had evolved from ancient warriors who learned that words could be more powerful than weapons, creating a culture that prized both physical prowess and intellectual cunning. She wasn't unkind to Nova, merely indifferent, which somehow felt worse. "Chun, you're with the Advanced Tactical Simulation Group today," announced Professor Helix, the Academy's strategic studies instructor, whose tentacled form allowed him to operate multiple holographic displays simultaneously. Room 7, Level 23. Nova's stomach dropped. Advanced groups were typically reserved for students who had already mastered basic concepts. She hadn't even figured out how to properly interface with the Academy's bioneural simulation systems. "Sir, I think there might be a mistake," she began. "No mistakes in my class scheduling algorithms." "Cadet," Professor Helix replied, his attention already shifting to other students. "Simulation begins in 15 minutes. Nova gathered her materials with trembling hands, aware that her classmates were watching with barely concealed amusement. Kira shot her a look that might have been sympathy, but it passed too quickly to be certain. The simulation chamber on level 23 was unlike anything Nova had seen before. Instead of the basic holographic projectors used in introductory classes, this room featured a fully immersive environment with neural interface pods that could create experiences indistinguishable from reality. Only the Academy's most promising students were permitted to train here. She paused at the threshold, wondering if she should simply turn around and admit the mistake to Professor Helix. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Warm and electric. Nova? I didn't expect to see you in the advanced sessions." Stellan's energy form materialized beside one of the interface pods. His luminous patterns cycling through what she had learned indicated surprise and pleasure. Over the past few weeks, they had managed a few brief conversations in the Academy's corridors, always cut short by his cousin Lysara or Nova's own nervous retreat. But those fleeting moments had become the highlights of her days. "I think there's been some kind of error," Nova admitted, clutching her datapad against her chest. "I'm barely keeping up with the basic simulations." "Impossible," said another voice, and Nova turned to see Android Unit ZX7 emerging from a maintenance alcove. The Academy students had nicknamed the unit Zixi for its habit of making tiny mechanical sounds that resembled laughter. Unlike most androids, Zixi had been programmed with curiosity subroutines that made it genuinely interested in student performance patterns. "Your adaptive problem-solving metrics are off the standard charts, Cadet Chun." Before Nova could respond, Kira Thorne strode into the chamber, her silver tattoos gleaming under the neural interface lighting. "Zixi's right," she said, surprising Nova with her first direct comment in weeks. "I've been watching your approach to the tactical exercises. You don't think like the rest of us? Is that good or bad?" Nova asked, genuinely uncertain. "Different," Stellan interjected, his energy form brightening with what she now recognized as excitement. "In strategic thinking, different often equals advantageous." The simulation chamber filled with other advanced students, beings whose species had been exploring space warfare and diplomacy for millennia. Nova felt increasingly out of place until Zixi approached with its characteristic mechanical grace. "Today's scenario involves a hostage situation on a mining station," the android explained. "Standard protocols suggest overwhelming force or prolonged negotiation. Previous student attempts have resulted in either extensive casualties or mission failure due to resource exhaustion." As the other students entered their neural pods, Nova hesitated. The bioneural interface technology was designed for species with standardized nervous systems. Humans, as usual, were the exception. "The human neural pattern requires modified settings," Stellan observed, moving to the control panel with practiced ease. "I've been studying the interface protocols." "May I?" Something in his tone made Nova's heart skip. "You've been studying human neural patterns?" "Among other things," he replied, his energy form flickering in what she was learning meant embarrassment. "Academic curiosity." As Stellan adjusted the neural interface, Nova felt the strange tingling sensation that occurred whenever he was near. His energy field seemed to resonate with something deep in her nervous system, creating a connection that transcended their physical differences. "There," he said softly. "The calibration should accommodate human brain chemistry now." Nova settled into the pod, feeling the neural connectors activate. The world dissolved around her, replaced by the sterile corridors of a mining station in crisis. Through the shared simulation link, she could sense her teammates, Stellan's brilliant analytical energy, Kira's tactical precision, and the methodical processing of several other species. The scenario unfolded with brutal efficiency. Armed revolutionaries had seized the mining station's central hub, holding 30 civilian workers hostage while demanding political concessions from the Galactic Council. The station's automated defenses were offline, and any rescue attempt would need to account for the facility's volatile mining. Equipment.Nova watched through the simulation as her teammates immediately fell into established patterns. The draconian student advocated for a direct assault, while the crystalline beings preferred systematic negotiation. Each approach was textbook perfect and completely predictable. "What do you see, Nova?" Stellan's voice reached her through the neural link, warm and encouraging. She studied the scenario from every angle, feeling the familiar itch of a puzzle that needed solving. Then she noticed something the others had missed, a detail so small that most species pattern recognition would dismiss it as irrelevant. "The revolutionaries' demands," she said slowly. "They're asking for political concessions, but they chose a mining station instead of a government facility or diplomatic outpost." "Irrelevant," declared the draconian student. "Criminals choose targets of opportunity." "No," Nova continued, her confidence growing. "Look at the mining operation. They're extracting rare crystals used in neural interface technology. The revolutionaries aren't interested in political change. They want the mining equipment." Through the neural link, she felt Stellan's excitement spike. "Of course. The political demands are misdirection, which means traditional hostage protocols won't work," Kira added, her tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. "They're not interested in negotiation, and a direct assault risks destroying what they actually came for." Nova's mind raced as she processed the new perspective. What if we give them what they want? Surrender the station? The draconian student's outrage crackled through the link. "Unacceptable." "Not surrender," Nova explained, her excitement building. "Contamination. The mining crystals are unstable when exposed to certain energy frequencies. If we could simulate a containment breach, they would be forced to evacuate to avoid crystal cascade failure." Stellan finished, his energy pattern practically singing with admiration. "Brilliant. But how do we generate the specific frequency needed?" Nova looked at him through the simulation sensory link, suddenly aware of the electric potential that surrounded his energy form. "I have an idea, but I'll need your help. Are you willing to try something that's definitely not in any academy manual?" For a moment, the entire simulation seemed to pause as Stellan considered her request. Then his luminous form blazed brighter than she had ever seen it. "Lead the way, Nova-chun." What followed was the most exhilarating 20 minutes of Nova's academic life. Working together through the neural link, she and Stellan orchestrated a deception that required perfect timing and absolute trust. While Kira and the other students provided tactical support, Nova guided Stellan's energy manipulation to create false readings throughout the mining station's sensor network. The revolutionaries, believing their prize was about to become radioactive, evacuated the station in record time. The hostages were rescued without a single casualty, and the mining operation remained intact. As the simulation ended and the neural pods opened, Nova felt a rush of triumph, unlike anything she had experienced. Around her, the other advanced students were buzzing with excitement and analysis, but her attention was focused entirely on Stellan. That was, he began, his energy form cycling through patterns she had never seen before. Extraordinary. It was a team effort, Nova replied, though her pulse was racing for more than just the simulation's intensity. No, Kira interjected, approaching with something that might have been respect in her expression. That was something new entirely. You didn't just solve the scenario, Nova. You changed how we think about it. Zixie's mechanical sounds approximated applause. Performance metrics indicate a 97% success rate with minimal resource expenditure. This approach will be incorporated into future training protocols. As the other students filed out of the chamber, discussing the unprecedented solution, Stellan lingered behind. His energy form seemed to pulse with nervous energy as he approached Nova's pod. Would you? He began, then stopped, his luminous patterns flickering with uncertainty. That is, if you're not too tired from the simulation, would you be interested in exploring some of the Academy's other training facilities? There are chambers designed for individual practice that might help you develop these tactics further. Nova's heart hammered against her ribs. Was he asking her to spend more time together? I'd like that very much. Excellent, Stellan replied, his energy form brightening considerably. Perhaps we could meet this evening? After the dining period? It's a date, Nova said, then immediately flushed red as she realized what she had said. I mean, it's scheduled. A scheduled training session. Stellan's energy patterns swirled in what she was certain was amusement. Yes, he agreed, his electrical voice carrying new warmth. A scheduled training session. As Nova gathered her materials and headed for the door, she caught Kira watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Their eyes met for a moment, and her roommate offered something that might have been an encouraging nod before turning away. Walking through the Academy's corridors toward her next class, Nova felt as if she was moving through a dream. In the span of a single simulation, everything had changed. She had proven herself capable of innovative thinking, earned the respect of her peers, and somehow managed to arrange what might actually be a date with the most fascinating being she had ever met. The stars visible through the Academy's vast viewports seemed to shine a little brighter as Nova hurried to her next class, unaware that several interested parties had been monitoring the advanced simulation sessions with great attention. Her unorthodox success had not gone unnoticed, and the ripples from her tactical breakthrough were about to spread far beyond the Academy's training chambers. But for now, she had a date to look forward to, and for the first time since arriving at the Academy, Nova Chun felt like she truly belonged among the stars. The Academy's observation deck stretched out like a crystalline garden beneath the star-filled expanse of space. Nova arrived early, her palms sweating despite the climate-controlled environment. She had changed her uniform 3 times before settling on her dress. Blues with the small silver pin that marked her as a first-year strategic studies student. You came. Stellan's voice carried a note of relief as his energy form materialized beside her. In the soft lighting of the observation deck, his luminous patterns seemed to dance with nervous excitement. Did you think I wouldn't? Nova asked, turning to face him properly. Even after weeks of interaction, she still found herself mesmerized by the way light flowed through his translucent form. I wasn't certain, he admitted, his energy patterns shifting to deeper hues. Interspecies relationships at the Academy are ... complicated. Before Nova could ask what he meant, the deck's entrance chimed with new arrivals. Kira Thorne stepped through, followed by a being Nova had never seen before. Where most students wore standard Academy uniforms, this newcomer was dressed in ornate robes that seemed to shift color with each movement. His species was clearly reptilian, with scales that gleamed like polished obsidian and eyes that held ancient intelligence. Stellan, Kira called out, her voice carrying a warning tone. Prince Valorian wishes to speak with you. The newcomer stepped forward with regal bearing, and Nova immediately understood why Kira had used his title. Everything about him projected nobility and power. "Stellan Voss of Alta Prime," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "I am Prince Valorian Rex of the Draconian Imperium. Your cousin Lysara has shared some concerning information." Nova felt ice form in her stomach. She started to step back, but Stellan's energy form flickered protectively between her and the prince. "Your Highness," Stellan replied formally, though Nova could see tension crackling through his luminous patterns. "I wasn't aware you took interest in Academy social activities." "Normally, I wouldn't," Valorian replied, his gaze shifting to Nova with calculating intelligence. "However, when the heir to one of Alta Prime's most influential energy dynasties begins forming inappropriate attachments, it becomes a matter of diplomatic concern." "Inappropriate?" Nova found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. Valorian's scaled features arranged themselves into what might have been a sympathetic expression. "Miss Chun, I bear you no personal animosity. Your tactical innovations in today's simulation were quite impressive. However, you must understand the delicate nature of interspecies politics." Kira stepped forward, her silver tattoos gleaming with agitation. "Perhaps this conversation should take place in private." "Your Highness." "No," Stellan said firmly, his energy form blazing brighter. "Nova has a right to hear anything that concerns her." Valorian nodded approvingly. "Very well. Miss Chun, are you aware that Stellan is not merely another Academy student? His family controls the primary energy networks for 3-star systems. His eventual bonding partner will have significant influence over galactic commerce and diplomacy." Nova's heart sank as the implications became clear. "And humans aren't considered suitable for such positions." "It's not about suitability," Valorian said, his tone becoming almost gentle. "It's about perception. The Alteran energy beings have never formed romantic bonds outside their species. If Stellan were to break that tradition, especially with a species as new to galactic society as humans, it could create significant political instability." "So I'm the problem," Nova said quietly, looking at Stellan, whose energy patterns were cycling through what she now recognized as anguish. "Not the problem," Stellan said fiercely, his luminous form pulsing with determination. "The problem is a political system that values tradition over genuine connection." "Stellan," a new voice interrupted, and Nova turned to see Ambassador Lucia Vega, the Academy's human diplomatic liaison, approaching with careful steps. Her presence surprised Nova. Ambassador Vega rarely interacted directly with students, preferring to work through official channels. "Ambassador," Nova said, offering a respectful nod. "Miss Chun," Ambassador Vega replied, her expression unreadable. "Prince Valorian Stellan. I hope I'm not interrupting an important discussion." "Actually, your timing is perfect," Valorian said. "As humanity's representative at the Academy, perhaps you could help Miss Chun understand the broader implications of her actions." "Ambassador." Vega's eyebrows rose slightly. "My actions, Your Highness?" "Her developing relationship with Stellan Voss," Valorian explained. "Surely you can see how this might complicate humanity's integration into galactic society." For a long moment, Ambassador Vega studied the assembled group. Nova held her breath, waiting for the diplomatic rejection she felt certain was coming. Instead, the ambassador surprised her. "Your Highness, with respect, I believe you may be underestimating both Miss Chun and the current state of galactic politics," she said calmly. "Humanity's rapid advancement has already disrupted many traditional power structures. Perhaps it's time to consider whether our diplomatic strategies should evolve as well." Nova stared at the ambassador in shock. She had expected official disapproval, not support. "Ambassador Vega," Prince Valorian said, his voice carrying a note of warning, "surely you understand the delicate balance we maintain between species. One inappropriate relationship could..." "Could what?" Stellan interjected, his energy form blazing with sudden intensity. "Could demonstrate that genuine connection transcends species barriers." could show that the future of galactic civilization lies in cooperation rather than segregation? Kira had remained silent throughout the exchange, but now she stepped forward. On Zarian Prime, we have a saying, "The strongest alliances are forged in the heart's fire," not the Council's chamber. Perhaps Prince Valorian should consider whether forbidding this connection might create more instability than allowing it. Valorian's scaled features shifted as he processed this unexpected opposition. His eyes narrowed as he studied each of them in turn. "You're all willing to risk political upheaval for the sake of one relationship. We're willing to risk it for the sake of progress," Ambassador Vega said firmly. Miss Chun's tactical innovations in today's simulation weren't just impressive, they were revolutionary. She's showing us new ways to think, new approaches to problem solving. That kind of fresh perspective is exactly what galactic society needs. Nova felt warmth spreading through her chest as she realized she wasn't facing this challenge alone. But her moment of hope was interrupted by another new arrival. "How touching," came Lysara's crystalline voice as she materialized at the observation deck's entrance. "A human sympathizer, a diplomatic rebel, and my cousin the romantic fool, all united in their determination to destroy centuries of carefully maintained social order." Stellan's energy patterns flared with anger. "Lysara, this isn't your concern. It became my concern the moment you decided to shame our family with this." "Dalliance," she replied, her purple energy form pulsing with disdain. "Mother sent me to retrieve you before you cause any more embarrassment." "I'm not going anywhere," Stellan declared, moving closer to Nova. "And Nova isn't a dalliance. She's brilliant, innovative, and capable of things none of us imagined possible. If that threatens your precious social order, perhaps the order needs to change." The observation deck fell silent, except for the soft hum of the Academy's environmental systems. Nova could feel the weight of decision pressing down on all of them. She looked at Stellan's radiant form, at the determined faces of her unexpected allies, and at the disapproving energy patterns of Lysara. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "everyone should stop deciding my future without asking what I want." All eyes turned to her, and Nova felt a familiar surge of the confidence she had discovered in the simulation chamber. "Your Highness, with respect, you're right about one thing. I am new to galactic society, and I don't understand all the political implications of my actions. But I do understand something else." She looked directly at Stellan, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I understand that in the past 3 weeks, Stellan has made me feel less alone than I've ever felt in my life. He's encouraged my ideas, celebrated my successes, and never once made me feel like I was less important because I'm human. That's not politics, that's connection." Stellan's energy form blazed with such intensity that several people had to shade their eyes. "Nova," he said, his electrical voice thick with emotion, "regardless of the consequences, I need you to know that what we have is real. Whatever happens next, that will never change." Prince Valorian watched this exchange with calculating eyes. After a long moment, he spoke. "Miss Chun Stellan, I will not pretend to understand the nature of your connection. However, I am beginning to see that attempting to prevent it might indeed cause more problems than allowing it to develop." Lysara's energy form flickered with outrage. "Valorian, you can't be serious." "I am completely serious," the prince replied. "Miss Chun's performance today suggests that unconventional thinking produces superior results. Perhaps it's time we applied that same principle to our social conventions." He turned to face Nova directly. "However, I have one condition. If you truly wish to pursue this relationship, you must prove that it can benefit galactic society as well as yourselves. The Academy's annual diplomatic tournament begins next week. If you and Stellan can demonstrate that your partnership produces results superior to traditional approaches, you will have my support. And if we can't?" Nova asked. Prince Valorian's expression grew serious. "Then Stellan will return to Alta Prime to fulfill as family obligations, and you will complete your studies without further interference. Do you accept these terms? Nova looked at Stellan, seeing her own determination reflected in his energy patterns. They had already proven they could accomplish remarkable things together. Now they would have to prove it mattered. "We accept," they said in unison as the group began to disperse. Ambassador Vega approached Nova privately. "Miss Chun, you should know that your success in today's simulation has attracted attention from the highest levels of galactic government. Win or lose, your future at the Academy is secure. But Stellan's future depends entirely on the outcome of this tournament." The weight of responsibility settled on Nova's shoulders as she watched Stellan's luminous form retreat with his cousin. In 1 week, she would have to prove that love could transcend politics, that innovation could overcome tradition, and that a human and an energy being could build something stronger together than either could achieve. Alone, the stars outside seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the universe itself was waiting to see whether hearts could indeed unite across the vastness of space.